So welcome to the July meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Commission. I want to start by welcoming our new member, Eldon Scott.
Thank you.
Tonight we're going to talk about the wastewater treatment system that was the subject of the public hearing back in March. Since then, we issued a request for proposals for engineers and lawyers. And at our next meeting on August 4th, we'll have presentations from some of the proposers. But maybe, Mark, we should start out by talking a little bit about what we asked them to do,
okay.
Mark Shishiford, and what we received.
Right, so we put together an RFP, a request for proposal, as well as a request for qualifications, requesting proposals from both engineers and law firms to basically set up the sewer district,
Right.
which gives the authority to then tax and finance and the wastewater collection system as well as the wastewater treatment system. So we have received a few proposals, very well put together proposals from very, very qualified firms and local firms. I think it was very well advertised. We advertised in the contract reporter, and then we also called a number of firms. So I think that everybody had a good opportunity to be able to respond to it. So we got it. They are a little bit more elaborate than I thought, so that's why tonight I'm not able to present yet a summary and analysis yet. But we will make, I will scan them tomorrow and send them to everybody here on the commission to review.
Should we talk about who submitted?
Well,
who the firms were who submitted? So we had an earlier submission from H2M.
From H2M, and now we have a PHW Grosser submitted with, and he did it as a team with a law firm from Eric Bregman.
Right.
And then there's another proposal from Pio Lombardi for the wastewater system. And then there was another law firm, Kosakoff,
Right.
that also submitted a proposal. So we have basically 3 engineering firms and 2 law firms.
Right, and then obviously the lawyer who was attached to the proposal.
Oh, yes.
from
H2M.
Yes, yes.
Right.
So it's
Right.
3 up, this
Yes,
is 3
three.
and 3.
3 and 3.
Right.
3 and 3, and I think they are very well qualified, the 3. It's going to be a tough
Right.
decision, because they are 3 very excellent firms.
Right.
So
And the village has allocated the funds for this phase, so
yes.
I think at the next meeting we'll have them come in, we'll do
Right.
have each of them make a presentation and then decide, so that we can move forward.
Yes.
One thing I think, if I remember about the firms, is there's going to be somewhat differences approach, but also at least one of the firms has a difference in the technology that they're going to recommend.
Right. There is one, it's a slightly different technology, so it's a different aspect to it. But what we are, at the stage where we are now, is to develop what's called a map and plan, which
Right.
is the definition of exactly the boundaries of the sewer district, the location of the sewage treatment plant, and then how is it going to be funded. So basically, that's a very, very preliminary system that's not going to study, that doesn't get into the technicality on exactly what kind of technology we're going to do.
Right.
But we have an idea of how it's going to be done, and we need to develop a budget for it and how we're going to fund it.
Right. And I think on the...
Then apply for grants. The next step will be to get a grant writer to then apply the Environmental Fund Corporation, the
Right.
federal government,
Right.
to the state,
Right.
the county.
So, one of the things I think, Mark, would be useful to go through, because it's come up a number of times over the last month, is why the preliminary sense, at least from one of the engineers, and I think from the county, that the hospital plant was not going to be, that the sewer treatment plant at the Southampton Hospital was not going to be the right answer.
Right.
I think we might want to talk about that again.
Well, we did study, one of the possibility was to reuse the Southampton Hospital sewage treatment plant, because it's a great little plant that, although it uses old technology, it could be easily upgraded to new technology and increasing capacity. But the problem is that it is very much linked with the hospital, and the only way they would do it, there would have to be a transfer of ownership, and they would also have to reduce the actual number of beds allowed in the hospital, because for installed capacity, even though
Right.
we could increase slightly the capacity to handle it, it's not, you know, it will not have the original capacity that it was designed for. So the hospital right now uses maybe 30 to 35% of that plant's capacity.
Yeah, they only use a third of it, I
Yeah,
know
so,
that.
yeah,
for a fact.
about 30%
However,
capacity.
the
But they don't
hospital
want,
is changing location.
right,
so
but they don't want to give up that, although they only use 30% capacity, they don't want to give up
all of it.
the ability
Right,
to.
but the hospital is changing location, so if the hospital is moving to Stony Brook and that space becomes something else, maybe there's a possibility of taking it over at that point.
The problem, I was told with that, if they do change location to become a condominium, then that sewer treatment plant will be maxed out. You
Like
will not be,
condominium?
yep, you will not be able to use it. That's what I was
I don't know
told.
about maxed out. I think that there is also an issue of timing. There's an
That's
issue
what
of timing.
I'm seeing
That's really,
timing.
although we understand that the Southampton Hospital has a desire to move, wants to move, is working something out, nothing has really been firmed up. And it's possible that we may sit here
Yeah,
10
but-
years from now, still talking about the
Waiting.
Well,
hospital.
not 10 years from now.
Well-
No, we don't,
They came to talk to us at Rotary. This, I think I think their schedules in the next 5 years, they will be
Yeah, 5
out of
years.
there. And the plan for the sewer, the timing is about 5 years, so it
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
may coincide.
That's gone.
Isn't part of the problem that, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, and I may have misread it, that because the plant is old technology, that you'd really, to reuse it, you would really need to shut it down and and basically re-equip it?
yeah, re-equip it. But
Right.
temporarily, we could put an outside plant
Uh-huh.
to handle whatever need there
Right,
is.
right.
So but I think in terms of timing, I think you're looking at longer term, because I think that, I understand they have to build a hospital.
Yes.
Right. So by the time they have the certificate of needs, and they have to build another hospital on the Stony Brook campus.
Well,
You know-
let's just say hypothetically, obviously if it takes 10 years, it's not gonna work. But hypothetically, if the timing were to be okay, would the structure itself work for us?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
It's a good question.
A
I think it would.
Right.
Okay.
I think
So-
it might,
So in any conversation that could exist, or could be had, we start with the premise that the facility can work for us, and then just a question to understand what the timing is, and that we can find out.
So that's very helpful. So maybe one way to look at it is, obviously, we have to figure out what the district is and what the technology is gonna be. There may be two options we need people to look at. What happens assuming, which I think should be the base case, assuming we have to build a plant
right.
in the district, and then as an alternate, if the hospital plant becomes available
Right.
in the right period of time,
Right.
how would that change it?
And to look at the
Right.
advantages, if there are advantages, I think one of the advantages that I heard was that the hospital is at a lower ground level than the village, and
Correct.
therefore will facilitate the flow.
Yes.
Yes,
And
yeah,
so-
yeah, yes.
So
yeah,
it would be greatly advantageous, and plus the construction costs are probably gonna be a lot less because we already have a facility
Right.
there.
So would you ask these firms to not only look at the new, but also look at the refit?
Yeah,
I think that in terms of
first we should talk to the hospital
Right.
on that.
I think in terms of
Yeah, I was
strategy,
gonna say, I think we first need to discuss it with the hospital,
I
and see
think,
if
yeah.
they're
If it's
open to that.
feasible.
Right,
I think in terms of strategy, what I would suggest to do is that to keep on the plan that we have, which is the creation of the sewer
Right,
district.
right.
We assume that we're gonna use to build the plant where it was proposed.
right.
Because otherwise, at the controller's office, it's not gonna,
Correct,
we're not gonna be able to get,
right, that's what
create.
Paul said. Let's-
So, and then as a plan B,
Right,
in parallel,
Oh, then
Right.
it's
we can
just-
always
Yeah.
amend the plan.
Right,
Right.
and then you just revise
If the
it.
sewage
Right.
treatment, because the only difference will be the treatment plant.
right,
Right.
It's not gonna be the system, it's
That's
not gonna,
correct.
only the sewage.
One thing I want to bring up is when you do decide the location of the sewer treatment plant, you're going to run into resistance from the residents. I can guarantee you that.
Right, that's why we
There is
wanted.
gonna be definite,
That's why the hospital,
But-
that's the third reason why the hospital.
And then, but that's also why I think we want this process to be very public and transparent.
Right.
So
yeah, but
no one
they
thinks-
also have to realize that sewer treatment plant, I can take you to Southampton plant, get you in there, and I can take you up to Hampton Rehab, and you'll see the difference between the sewer treatment plants. I mean, it's like night and day between the technologies. You go inside. You don't smell anything on the outside. Even when you go into Hampton Rehab, you're very, very faint odor, whereas if you go into Southampton Hospital, you really,
Southampton Hospital is it's like technology 30 years ago.
it's probably
Well,
even
where
older
is
than
the
that.
proposed site again? Where is the proposed site?
Well, we don't have a, there's been some sites discussed, but just to be clear, that's really
In your
part of what.
backyard.
Right.
I thought,
Close door.
I thought it was up, I was up above the dog park.
But that's,
Yeah.
that was one thing that was discussed.
We're getting the
Isn't
upgrades
it above the
already.
dog park?
No,
Around
Chris,
there.
sorry, just,
I'm sorry.
there was talk about that as location, but one of the things that we want these people to study is, what is the right location?
Right.
So that was really before there was a study.
Right.
So that may turn out to be the right location or not. So there's not a
So
decision.
they're gonna
of-
look for the location?
They're gonna look and see, obviously, there've been some discussed, they'll evaluate those, and they may come up with some other location they think is the right location. And that's part of why we're doing the study.
But it's a
And-
good
Yeah, we
look, that
kept
one
it-
there,
kept it open.
because of the
Right.
slope, it could be completely recessed into the.
You're talking about the dog park?
Right,
Right.
it's a great location for it, because it could be like half buried, half buried, you would barely see it, would be right into the ground. And the technology that we are proposing for the effluent is, we do what's called deep water recharge, where you don't go into leaching fields anymore, you actually treat the water to potable water
Yeah,
standard,
yeah,
and
I
then
got
put
you.
it back into the,
So does that mean you don't really need to be as high above the water table? Because my understanding was that the distance to the water table, is that a factor?
no, the distance to the water table is for the septic systems.
But for these systems, it
No.
doesn't matter.
Well, once it becomes potable, then it can go right into the
Right.
water.
Yeah, one of the problems that, there's a book that was put out by Suffolk County, it was Stony Brook Historical Society.
About the
And
water.
in it, that Suffolk County and New York State did a survey of groundwater for Long Island. And in the book, the biggest problem that they stated in the book was from the sewer treatment plants,
Right.
not recharging the water back into our water table, but pumping it out to the ocean. That was one of the major issues that they had in this article. The other thing too is they specified how much population, I think it was 2.5 million Suffolk County could have, Nassau 1 million, and so on. And once we got that 2.5 million, we'd have to start having problems with our water. And that was the point that they had. But the most important thing they pointed about is the sewer treatment plants pumping the treated water back into the salt water instead of recharging it, instead of putting it into ponds or into wells, recharging it back into the
But
ground.
to put it into wells or to recharge, you have to treat it to a different level.
Right.
Yes.
So when you treat it to just on leaching field, you treat like this, the hospital treats it, it's not really potable water, it's just,
It gets filtered in by the ground.
by the ground.
I
Whereas in order to do this, you have to treat it to potable water standard and then reinject. In California, it's the law, it's every sewage treatment plant.
Right.
I
brings it
believe
back.
in San Diego that they're using high-pressure water filters, because I was at a seminar, in fact, a historical, and the guy was from the water district down in Florida, he was talking about these high-pressure, where they actually purify the water. And
Yes.
it goes right back into drinking water.
Well, it's
'Cause
called,
it's-
it's called, it's technology that's about maybe 8, 10 years old. It's membrane technology where it's
Membrane.
nanotechnology. Where
Right.
It's like threads of plastics
Yes.
that have a hole that's smaller than a virus. So a virus cannot go, it only allows the water to go through.
Who cleans the filters?
It's actually, you don't really clean, it's just the effluent at the end that gets the sludge. It's not
And
filtered.
where does the sludge go?
Right now, all the sludges go to Bergen Point in Long Island.
Yeah.
Oh,
Gets
it's gonna
trucked
bury it.
out.
Yeah,
Trucked
no,
out?
it gets trucked and
Yeah.
trucked back,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
made into fertilizer.
Sent to
whatever.
China.
Fertilizer, so they
Fertilizer.
reuse it. Fertilizer, so that's really
So it comes
nitrogen
back,
coming out.
really, it
Yes.
basically comes back.
No, in the city it's sent to New Jersey, actually.
Yeah, right, but eventually it's gonna come, anyway. So I have two questions, or two thoughts. One is, I also understand that there's gonna be a new ambulance center built up in the property with the police station and the dog
No,
park and the...
you're right, there was, there
And
were.
I'm going, oh boy, I'm glad this
No,
property
you're
is so
right,
big.
You're right, it is either or. I think that. Or maybe we can do both, but you're right, it is in the same location.
There's one thing I want to mention,
I
you
don't
probably
like
don't know,
that.
but there was a school up there at one time.
Yes, it's under the
Now,
ground.
is that foundation still in, or they're just
Yes.
filling in? So when you start digging, you're gonna find a huge foundation underneath that building.
Yeah,
They
that's
tore that
that's
building down
relocation.
But again, I think you're
1935.
right, and that's why I think the issue of the location is one of the things they're really gonna have to look at, because I think one of the things I would say is we probably shouldn't be dependent on one location at this point, because who knows what issues are gonna come up, so we should have a
Well, I
few
know that
potential.
the ambulance center is
opportunities.
gonna get, is gonna supersede any of this. I mean, in a heartbeat,
I'm not so sure.
I am.
Where is it in the process?
It's
Do you know?
I
a
don't
shorter
know.
term
Proposal.
thing, probably
Yeah.
would.
The other thing is that if the timing doesn't coincide to
Close to the hospital.
use the hospital, that could still be reserved as an expansion to include perhaps the town hall and the schools
Yeah,
and.
yes.
Yeah, that's very
and-
good.
And
Yes,
so,
yes,
That's
definitely.
that's a good point.
so that
Right,
that it
right.
could be a part
Yes,
of the system, but it would be,
Right.
it would be the expansion out of the business district
That's a good point.
to other districts.
Right.
expand the district.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a
yeah,
very good point.
yeah, yeah.
Could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the sad, you know, and I think we'll need to talk to the hospital. Mark is right, the process, because we're the project managers for an ambulatory care facility in the city, and the process of planning, getting the certificate of need, getting it financed, getting it built is, you know, it takes time.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
definitely gonna take time, and I assume part of the issue here is, I'm assuming, and I don't know for sure, certain, but I'm assuming their licensed bed count is significantly higher than what they actually use at this point, if it's like most hospitals. And so that's
Right.
part of the process with the state is going through, usually reducing that. I assume their bed count right now, that's probably part of the issue with the sewer plant, that their count officially is higher than what they actually use.
right.
So even though they may only be using 30% of the plant, they have to have the rest available because that's what the license is for.
Oh, I see. That's
Right,
interesting.
I think that's probably what's going on, because most hospitals now, one of the major issues they have is you know, as medicine has shifted from inpatient to outpatient,
Right.
the licensing
More bed
process with
space.
the state has not kept pace. So hospitals are licensed for significantly more beds than they use, but that doesn't mean but that doesn't translate into that you can take that space and just make it
You have to-
outpatient.
you
It
have
doesn't
to
work that
You have to
way.
maintain the capacity. because
Correct,
of the licensing.
correct.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, so, I think that could be part of the issue.
Okay, it's all very exciting.
Yes.
So, and how long do we think the study take? Mark, do we have a sense of how long a
It'll
period
take
of time
around
these
like
people?
9 months to
Right.
create the sewer district,
Right,
between 6 to 9 months.
right,
At that point, people within the sewer district will know how much it will cost,
right,
and then there'll be a decision to be made on to how much will the village itself contribute
right.
as an overall, and then how much do the people within the district contribute, and then how,
Right.
you know, what
So,
other.
so let's assume for the moment that the village, which I think we can, the village can get the contracts written and everything done so they can start by September 1st. That would mean somewhere around the end of March, the
Yes.
study would be done. I think we also need to sort of think about having a series of public hearings as they're going along.
Yes.
Because all the issues that Laura's bringing up are gonna be very much out there as it gets more real.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yes.
think when you talk in concept, people like the concept, everyone understands the need to clean up the wastewater and the stormwater in the village center, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But when you then talk in reality of like, where do you put the plant, I
Where you put
think
the plant, yes.
the more public conversation we have, the better we're gonna do with this. So we're gonna need to have a series of hearings along the way so
I
people
think we should
can.
have hearings, and I think we should also do sort of marketing, perhaps, you know, taking ads out in the press,
Right,
saying that we're talking about this, we're considering this,
and we need input.
and,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
then, you know, so that everybody gets in the know,
Yeah,
so to
yeah.
speak.
As part of this study, are you also going to be looking at the road runoff issue, or is that completely separate?
Well,
That's
that's
completely
part of
separate.
it. Isn't that part of it?
No.
Isn't part of
But
it?
could,
Well,
is there
part of
any
the
talk about
master
discussing, I know at one point there was discussion of French drains or ways.
Well, the
of-
village has been, so
That's
the
part of the
village
master
has
plan.
been putting drains in,
Mhm.
and is continuing, and actually, so let's go back, it's a good point, the design for the rebuilding of, Nugent Street and Windmill Lane, when those are rebuilt, the design for those two streets that's in the Village Center Master Plan has extensive provisions for drainage, particularly in Windmill Lane, including swales, so that you can percolate the water down. So-
That's all in theory with the village master plan and whatnot, but I think that Eldon's point is pretty good. Since
Right.
we're spending money
Right,
on a treatment plant and the
And
sewer
digging the street
district,
up.
right.
can't they also look into that aspect?
Well, it would
and
be a
make it
good
part of
time
it?
to rebuild the street. It would be a
Right.
really good time to rebuild those
But even
streets.
though, right now, what's
Right.
proposed.
Because
Right.
if we don't do that now,
Right,
it's not gonna
right,
happen for the
right.
next 20 years.
But in
Right.
the
And
design,
obviously
and
did
this,
not
Eldon,
have
I
the
can
road.
go over it with you, after the meeting, but right now, the way it has been designed, the collection system has been designed, there's gonna be minimal amount of street disturbance.
Oh,
We are really putting
It's like a tunnel.
It's only like
everything
3
in the
feet.
back, it's in the back of the building where their septic system is. So we don't wanna, there was not a mistake, but the way it was done in Sag Harbor, where everybody had to rework
Yeah.
the plumbing inside.
Mhm.
Here, with the way we have it, because we have the parking lots in the back, and everybody has their septic system in the back, we are putting the collectors in the back.
Mhm.
And the type of system we're using is called a low-pressure system. It's only like a 6-inch pipe, and you're able to do it with directional drilling, go underneath. It's a minimal amount of digging.
So they can tunnel without doing an open
Yes.
trench?
Yes, it's
Exactly.
like the oil
It's
drillers.
called
It's like
directional
when-
boring.
Yeah. when
And
they
it
do the
actually
oil.
can steer it.
This is like
Yeah,
they
they
put the
can.
irrigation system in
Yeah,
your
but they
yard,
do
it's
for
basically
all.
the same thing, right?
Well, it doesn't cut the,
No, it's a directional boring machine.
just underneath.
Yes.
It will, somebody will watch these things, and they can actually steer it to a certain point.
Yes.
So it doesn't.
No, it doesn't cut, it goes
Cut.
directly
But
down.
it still might be
But
interesting to
still-
at least revisit where,
Yeah, I think
where
that's
all
a
that
great
road
idea.
runoff.
Yeah.
The
issues are.
runoffs, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the runoff is a separate issue.
Yeah.
It is a good point, though, because I think when they
Well,
rebuilt,
it's a separate issue, but, you know, the
it's
sewer.
part of the overall land.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the sewer system is also a question of Lake Agawam and the
Yeah.
runoff
And it is-
septic going into the nitrate and whatever.
Yeah, and it is
So
a
it's
good,
all-
it is a really good point, because when they reconstructed Hampton Road to do the parallel parking, they did a lot of good work there, but one thing they did not do is change the drainage.
Right.
I don't think it came up, so we want to make sure on Hampton Road and on Nugent Street and Windmill Lane that
Mhm.
Yes.
they remember that was, because that was a major piece of the Village Center plan, was to improve the drainage on those streets. Because one issue, as I think we all know, it came up in it, is, when you try to understand why is there so much vacant space on Windmill Lane, one of the issues with many of those buildings is they actually flood.
Right.
So, so if we don't address the drainage, you're gonna continue to have those problems on
Right.
Windmill Lane. That's very hard for those landlords to actually get tenants in those buildings, because they have so many water issues.
If we're getting money from
Right.
the state and with grants and
Right.
whatnot, maybe if we do it as one package, maybe
Right.
we can get the whole thing done.
Right.
I mean, that would
Right.
be ideal. Because if we do it as a separate project,
Right.
the next, that project will start
Right.
5 years from now,
That's
and we'll
true.
think
Yeah,
about it
right.
10 years
Silly.
from now.
Right, and that clearly is a
Let's do 'em
piece of the
together.
Agawam Lake problem.
Should go together.
Right,
Right,
right.
right.
The proposal, say you were talking about the timeline for a
Right.
proposal and stuff, do the proposals also include grants? In other words, who they're gonna reach out for this
No.
grant, that
No,
grant?
no, we're gonna,
We're doing
I think what the trustees wanna do, the village has a grant writer who's
Yes,
very
I
good. And I think, we're gonna use her, I mean, she's gonna take, and she's gonna take the input to help us write grants to the state, the county, state, and federal agencies that give out these grants.
I think
But
it would be very
we may
helpful.
go out for bid for.
Right.
on the grant, right?
Right,
That
right.
has done,
That has done that
kind of-
specific, I
yeah,
think so,
specific,
because,
yes.
Right.
I don't know about Jennifer and
Right.
these types of grants, but anyway, I'm just curious, as part of any proposal that is presented to the public or any information, I think it would be very helpful that if you, because everybody knows it's gonna cost money, if you also include the fact that this grant, if we get this grant, this would be this much money. And if we get this grant, this would be this much money, to sort of offset in their minds what, oh, well, we can get that money. So maybe maybe we can make this thing work. So I think it should be included with any public,
Right.
that the grants that are available, how much they offer, and if we would be eligible for that
Right.
grant.
But I think-
Just throwing out numbers to
Right.
people. I don't
But
know.
there is there's a substantial amount of funding
Yes.
available for this type of project.
Right.
And, right.
And I think it
And
should
we
be
already-
concrete.
yeah.
I
And
think it
we
should be
already
concrete.
We have, during the study through the county, we did register that project with
Right.
the federal government, with
Mhm.
EFC,
Right.
Environmental
Right.
Fund Corporation, that funds that
Right.
type of project.
I think-
So we already registered.
I think the other thing we want to talk to the lawyers about is certainly at least two things we want to look at, or two options, is a funding base for which is, in the village center, so fees to the village center, and these are not mutually exclusive in any way. And then on the other side, the village at this point has very significant bonding capacity, and interest rates are amazingly low right now.
Well, don't bet after October that they're going to be
Well,
that.
for now at least. So that's certainly one of the things I think they're going to look at is it might be less expensive to use the village-wide bonding authority and then maybe have the people who benefit from the wastewater treatment actually pay the user fees. So there's a number of different ways of
I just-
financing it that we're going to want to look at, I think, given the
I just think that when you talk to
village
people,
capacity.
people want to know dollars and cents,
Yeah.
and they don't want to hear significant funding, or
Right.
we'll get this grant. I mean, talk to them in dollars and
All right.
cents, and I think, oh, well, that grant's for $100,000, oh, that grant's for, $50,000, oh,
Right.
this whole thing is going to cost this grand, I mean,
Yep.
I think yeah,
Okay.
that's all. I think it's important.
Right. Well, that's the idea of
Right.
the development of that
Right.
sewer district.
Yeah.
It's that financial issue, which is,
Mm-hmm.
this is more of a financial issue than a technical issue at
Right,
this stage.
absolutely,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Did you hear that the house on Windmill Lane is under contract? That one that's got the historical, the one that has the bamboo in front of it,
Oh,
and that's, has the facade. but
Yeah,
then-
yeah.
Yeah, I heard it was under contract.
so maybe actually do something with it
For
finally.
now, I don't know,
Right,
till they
right.
find out.
Well, one other thing I want to, since we're looking at a sewer system, because I've been talking about this, while we're doing the sewer system, we should think about possibly getting the electric lines or putting conduit underground.
We're not breaking the asphalt, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you use a directional boring
Yeah,
machine
you can do the
and
same
run
thing.
conduit
Sure
underneath
you
the
can.
splice boxes,
Sure you can.
and eventually set it up so when you do it, your basic infrastructure's in place, and then do the rest of the village, get an engineer to grid the village out, and every time they rebuild the street, the village has got the equipment to dig up the streets, drop the conduit, put the splice boxes, no wire, just put the basic interest, and then when you get ready to do street by street, then start dropping the lines and getting rid of all the telephone poles in the village and all the wires.
Be great.
You know what Job's Lane looks like with all those wires? Looks terrible.
Does.
Isn't there also an enormous expense every time there's a storm?
A transformer blows up or somebody hits a telephone pole, something like that.
Right.
Let alone a store window.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be the-
In some streets in the village, I think they got together and they actually.
Well, that's what we did on our street, and it's amazing because we didn't get all the lines down, we got a number of the lines down, and ever since we did that, the number of power outages on our street has declined by like 90%. It's unbelievable. Because we used to lose power all the time, and now we almost never
Does
lose
East
power.
Hampton have a system that all their lines are, it's one of the villages, don't they have a great number of their lines buried?
I think the village of Islip, when I looked into it, I called LIPR up quite a few years ago, and I spoke to a representative, he said, I think it was the village of Islip did it, and they buried all the electric lines underground. And he was willing to come out here, I don't know if I could still
The
find it.
utilities are unhappy about doing it because it costs them more money to service the lines than if the lines are above grade.
True.
So for them,
True.
they don't really care that the power goes
Well,
out, they just
I mean,
care that it costs them more money
Look
to
at all
actually
those,
fix the line.
look
What
at
I'm
all those
suggesting
border people,
is-
we can get them to dig the ditches.
What they're doing is they're direct burying the cables. I'm suggesting we
That's
put it in
awful. I
conduit.
shouldn't say
Right.
that.
So it's a sleeve, so if something goes wrong, you can pull the cable out.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And
I'm looking
I mean,
at
that's
from
the
the
reason for the conduit.
serviceability, you know, whereas the direct burial system is very inexpensive to do, you
Right.
can bury it. But if you initially put the conduit and splice boxes
Right.
in, then you can pull the wires through it, the wire goes big, you can pull
But
the
you
wire
can't-
out.
You can't pull the wire through the conduits they're using for the sewer, though.
No, I'm talking, these
No,
would
no,
be, they'd
these
be
would-
separate, they
they
have
would
to
be
be separate by
parallel.
somebody.
Or-
So you're talking about
Two-
But
two
could they be next to
At
each other?
least two, and one for the phone company, three, and maybe
No,
phone
they'd
company.
be
You have to
separate.
find out
They-
what
they
the.
can
One is
do
in the
that at
back,
the same
the other is in
time?
the front.
They
Right.
can do that at the same time,
Right.
for all
It
these
would-
different.
they would
that is
go-
not
I don't
doing-
think so.
no.
They're going in
One is
opposite
the back,
places.
and one is in the front. It's not, I mean,
Oh, I see, they would have to go farther.
no,
Part of the
the
building.
power is in the
Right,
front,
I got
and
you,
the sewage is in the back.
Yeah, but
gotcha.
Main Street, all the
But-
power lines are in the back of the building.
Well,
everything.
where are the power boxes
On
though?
Main Street,
On
yes.
Main
No,
Street.
that's true.
They're in the
That's
back.
Job's Lane, they're on Job's Lane, but then you have the village parking lot behind it.
true,
Well,
Yeah.
that's where the sewer is gonna be.
Yeah, but it would be easy enough to swing those cables over and swing
we
them over.
work.
Yeah,
But
well,
you
where-
have to help as a landlord that owns a building on Job's Lane, you'd have to give some type of incentive for the landlords, just as you did, if you did the street, give them such and such a break to make this connection underneath to help offset some of the costs.
The engineers that have proposals from, would they know the cost of the tunneling? I mean, you have
Yeah,
estimates.
that's part, but that's part
Build
of,
it.
part of the mapping
Low
plan,
pressure, yeah.
is to establish a fairly exact budget, so that we can then set in place the financing and the tax, the ability to tax and how you're gonna finance that project.
But I
So
don't
that's
think,
part of the,
but I don't
that's-
think they're gonna be that familiar with running cables, to conduit for electrical or
No,
phone. I mean,
these are-
that's not what
these
they
are
do.
You would have to
That'd be something
contact,
else.
which
Separate.
PSE&G.
right.
Right.
And like I said, I spoke to
This
a
is
representative, he was willing to come out here because they already did it for
Yeah.
the village of
They
Iceland.
own, I think they own the cables.
Yeah,
Yeah,
SNG
yeah,
owns the cables, and, so it's a different, completely different.
Yeah,
We could, at the same time, study it, but it's
be
completely.
a separate study, be a separate
Because
project.
PSENG has to do it, it's their cable.
It's a different
with-
entity, a
with
whole
the-
different thing.
Where the cable
right,
companies and the.
right.
Are they electrical boxes for this, are they on the backs of the buildings?
it depends, Main Street, all the power supply is coming off West Main Street, feeding
Right.
Main Street. And the
Right.
same thing with the other side of Main Street. Job's Lane, the lines go
On
down.
Job's Lane.
Now, I can't remember where, in 1938, they were supposed to bury the lines on Job's Lane. And I don't know if they ever put the conduit in or anything, but then the war broke out and then everything just ceased. But someplace along the line, I came across, they were supposed to do it.
You're saying
on-
that in 1938, you were there checking it
No,
out?
I was reading something in one of the books, and they were talking about 1938, they were gonna put
Oh,
this,
okay.
and I don't know whether they got anywhere with it, or if they put the
Our
conduit in.
historian, I've been there. Napoleon, I was there.
Well, Adolf Hitler should have read what happened to Napoleon, he would have been,
All right,
history just repeats itself.
That's it.
Okay, so anything else on wastewater?
no, I think that's it.
So let me mention two other things. One is, we had a number of meetings where we talked about the request for rezoning on North Sea Road. I hope everyone saw that the trustees approved the study that we all worked on the outline for,
Mhm.
which is great. So Chick Voorhees will be starting that study.
Do we have a timing on that?
I think he's thinking about 6 months for the sort of an initial for findings. And obviously, he's gonna look at both zoning options and then look at traffic impacts, environmental impacts of what the different
Yeah, all the
zoning
specifics.
powers. And we've also, as you know, we've split it into a district north of the Long Island Railroad embankment and south of the embankment, because the issues are somewhat different.
Yeah,
in
I
those
think
And
two
where does
agree.
it
I
end? Where
absolutely
did
agree.
it end? Does it end?
Bowdoin
with that
Square.
tree? Okay.
Bowdoin Square was sort of our south end.
Right.
Okay.
I
So,
agree that it's really two separate.
right,
issues.
right, it's really different. And then secondly, I want to mention the Southampton Association had submitted a analysis of the current residential zoning to the trustees back in May, I believe. And the mayor has asked us to take a look at that, and I think over the next few months, we're gonna start to look through that and see if we recommend any changes. So that's the other thing we're gonna spend some time on looking forward. So,
What about was that Village Latch and the Salham Inn going from residential to hotel?
Oh, yeah,
um,
that's right.
yeah.
To re-
that-
that rezoning,
Yeah,
they asked for a special permit for the.
Right. I
Have
don't,
they received it?
no, it's not done yet. It's actually the Village Latch who asked.
Yes.
I think the approach we had recommended to the village was
To rezone,
to rezone both.
Yeah.
Because they're both hotels.
right.
but it's always been hotel.
I
mean,
know.
It's been like before the turn of the century.
It's a remnant of
Right.
history
But the
that's
problem
not.
is the hotel zone is, we need to review the hotel
Right.
zone.
It's not a hotel zone, though.
No, right now it's residential, they want
Right,
to make it
right.
hotel, because right
Right,
now,
exactly.
anything that
How
they do
about
have to.
rezoning? I mean, right now, it's not a hotel zone.
One of the
No, I know,
issues
it's real
is when
residential, which is ridiculous.
we're allowing, if you remember the Village Center, we allowed hotels in a limited area by special exception only with a lot of restrictions on it. Yeah, but there were a number of restrictions we put on, such as, so that they weren't used as timeshares, a number of other concerns that the trustees had.
Right.
So I think that's part of the conversation about
Okay.
that rezoning, is to put in some of those same restrictions.
So we
Um,
need to update
Right.
the hotel district zoning.
Right, but I think, some of the conversation about the sewer district is obviously whether we include the Southampton Inn and Village Latch in the sewer district, because otherwise they would have to build their own.
Yeah, I think
Treatment
it-
plan.
Which they have room for,
Right.
and
I think it'd be
it's
a good
in the
idea that they
plan.
come into
Right.
it.
Right,
I think it'd be a good idea to do that.
right. So,
There's a lot of use there.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
don't include them,
Right.
you're kind of defeating the
right,
purpose.
right.
The other option is go up to Whitefields with all those condos in there. But then that's a seasonal,
I think the general approach, and obviously we'll wait for the consultant's recommendation, but the general approach has been to try to keep it in the village center
Right, the
zoning district.
Mhm.
It's because once we get into the residential districts, there are gonna be other issues and other concerns.
Right.
Even though
Um,
now we had that Cooper's Farm
Right,
condominium
right,
possibly there, because it is right on the tributary area for the discharge right straight into the river.
right.
well, I was thinking if we went up to the two hotels up there,
They are much
Whitefields is
further, yeah.
right next door.
Right.
And that's if they want to.
I think there's two issues. Do they want to, and number two, the sort of, the thing that fits together in the Village Center Business District is we've already done a study of what the potential REDA development is.
Right.
So we know that, if you put in sewer and you were to rebuild, we know what the capacity is. Once you go beyond that, we really haven't done a study of what could be rebuilt on the other sites, and so I think it's gonna be.
Yeah, although if it's zoned residential, you know what they can be, I mean, they have to
Right,
be within
right,
the
but
zoning parameters.
Right,
They're
but,
not going anywhere.
But if we're re-examining residential zoning,
no, but we're not doing
We're
that
not-
type
we're not
of
re-examining.
analysis. No, we're gonna, that analysis would really be, for example, on Whitefields, how much could you build if you weren't constrained? And it's obviously underbuilt under current zoning significantly, so.
Right.
so I'm confused.
Right.
Well, it's
We've been
like,
asked to re-examine residential
Just,
zoning.
but let me actually be more
These are
precise, in the
dimensional
small
regulations.
lots, this is the issue of housing
Okay,
in small lots.
small lots.
Right.
And also only dimensional regulations.
Right, this is not so what you're dealing with on something like Whitefields, if you were to sort of change
Condominium.
the capacity, is you have a large site that could accommodate more housing, and I don't think that's a study we've yet done of whether we're prepared to open up denser housing on those sites, so.
So the residential zoning that we're,
What we've been asked to look at is the dimensional,
Regulations.
regulations, particularly on the small lots.
small lot meaning,
Like in the R7.5 zone.
Oh.
R7.5 or R12.5, right,
Okay,
right,
all
right,
R75 to R12.5.
right,
Yes.
right,
Okay, and with setbacks and height and,
Exactly.
right,
Okay.
right,
all right.
right.
where there's a certain too much restriction.
Right. So in the larger lots, we actually are very restrictive compared to other villages. The 2 3-acre lots, we actually have the most limited zoning in the Hamptons, it turns out. Okay, so, thank you.
Thank you.